Welcome to a new episode of Sustainability Forward, the podcast where we explore bold ideas and real solutions for a more sustainable future. I'm your host, Rishi, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Carmine. Before we go into today's main topic, we have a few sustainability-related pressing news that we wanted to discuss. Isn't that right, Carmine?
Yes, Rishi. It is actually related to one of the previous episodes that we did with Maurizio talking about honey and bees. So we saw really a significant news study in the previous days. It's coming from the Washington State University. These etymologists are projecting now that the honeybee colonies in the US could face losses up to 70%, so 70 in 2025. This is really a substantial increase from the typical annual losses that we are seeing so far. It's already big, from 40 to 50% over the past decade.
Wow, that's really alarming. I remember we'd already discussed this problem with Maurizio, but seeing this number truly is alarming. And considering that bees have such a huge impact, about 35% of the world's food crops depend on animal pollinators like honeybees, such a decline could have profound impact for agriculture as well as food security.
Indeed. And factors contributing to this decline include nutritional deficiencies, mite infestation, diseases, possible pesticides, and the potential impact on crops like almonds, apples, berries is quite concerning.
That's right. And that brings us to the topic of biodiversity and self-sufficient living. With pollinators under threat, there's an urgent need to support and protect them. One way individuals can contribute is by creating pollinator-friendly habitats in their own backyards.
That's a great point, Rishi. And speaking of self-sufficiency, we are thrilled to have a special guest today who embodies this ethos. So we are joined by Marjory Wildcraft. And so let me introduce them. So she's a female leader in the survival and preparedness movement. In 2009, she founded the Growth Network, which is a community of people focused on modern self-sufficient living. She has been featured by National Geographic as an expert in off-grid living. She hosts the Mother Earth News Online Homesteading Summit, and she's listed in Who is Who in America for having inspired hundreds of thousands of backyard gardens. Marjory was focused on the article that won the Reuters Food Sustainability Media Award, as she recently authored the Grow System, the essential guide to modern self-sufficient living, from growth living food to making medicine. She's best known for her DVD series, Grow Your Own Groceries, which has over 1 million copies in use by homesteaders, foodies, preppers, universities, and missionary organizations all around the world. So welcome, Marjory.
Oh, thank you. Thank you both, Rishi and Carmine. I'm really delighted to be with you. We have some really important work to do. And the good news here is rather than just listening to podcasts, which is important to know what's going on, there's actual things that you can do to help the situation. So I'm hoping to bring that forward today.
Absolutely. Marjorie, maybe that's where we start. We wanted to understand, your journey into this world of self-sufficiency, what sparked your passion for sustainability and off-grid living. And if you can help us understand some of these early challenges and opportunities that you saw, particularly with the Grow Network later on, that would give us our audience a peek into, your background.
Yeah, sure. So I was not a hippie or not born to parents who were farmers. I grew up in a suburb. So no farming background, no gardening, nothing like that. So anybody who has no experience, I can relate to you. I wasn't born knowing this stuff. My first degree was engineering. And then later on, I became a professional real estate investor. And I made my first million by the time I was 40 years old. In fact, my business was so successful, I was on national television on a infomercial with Robert Kiyosaki selling Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I've always been interested in my community, and I was volunteering on a project that I thought it was just an innocent little project, but it completely changed my life, and it was an utter failure. And what it was we were trying to get locally grown food into the school system. And we started with this one little rural elementary school, and the whole project completely failed. By the way, I was in Central Texas, right, outside of Austin, Texas. That project completely failed because it turned out there were not enough local organic farmers to provide even part of the vegetables to one small rural elementary school. And Texas has some big counties. I mean, there's, and I just started shaking because I knew that, it takes the average food travels here in the United States about 1,500 miles. That there's only 4 days worth of food in the grocery stores. And they do say that, we're only 9 meals away from anarchy. And I could just see it right there. There just weren't, the small family farm network has been completely destroyed in America. That was more than 20 years ago. And since then, we've had a small revival, but it's nowhere near enough. And in that experience, I started shaking. For years, I had panic attacks because I realized that there are scenarios where no amount of money would get you what you needed. If anything happened to the just-in-time trucking system, or, our system, it's astonishingly robust, but it's also has a lot of failure points and could be taken down pretty easily. So, yeah, I just said, okay, the world doesn't need another engineer, or making money is something that many people know how to do. Almost nobody knows how to grow food. So I had better learn this. And then as soon as you start doing it, you realize you really need community. And so I began teaching other people, and then one thing led to another, and I ended up creating the Grow Network and taking on the mission of helping to teach more and more people how to grow food in their backyard. So that's the genesis of the Grow Network. Yeah.
So, Marjorie, then say in the last 20 years, is this what you've been doing more or less full time?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, uh, I was also homeschooling my kids and growing food to feed my family and wife and mom, and involved in my community. But yeah, it's been a passion because I can't, the world situation every day, it's still there,
Yeah, well, of
and I
course.
have to do something about it. So,
Or getting worse, maybe.
it absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Marjorie,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm
sorry,
sorry.
myself, Alicia, we came from the energy background.
Mm.
And often in energy, we talk about the energy trilemma. So we say that energy has to be cheap, has to be secure, has to be green going forward. And probably there is a correlation between this kind of trilemma that we see in energy also on the food part. Currently in energy, probably the pendulum is swinging more towards the security of the three. What about the food part?
Yeah, well, food has actually gotten really, really, really cheap. It's not green and it's not healthy, and I don't even consider it food, but the vast majority of stuff sold in the grocery store is very inexpensive. I think most people, what I'm seeing now, most people are also turning toward food security as the reason to grow food. But really, you should have been growing food for the last 20 years because the nutritional content in the food is basically non-existent. In the last 100 years, we've gone from having deeply nutritious food to having almost nothing. Nothing. One small example is, when I'm 62, and when I was young, my mom, give me a carrot as a snack or something. If I were to do that to my kids, I would need to give them 11 carrots to get the same nutritional content. So it's gone. The conventional agriculture has completely wiped out all of the mineralization in the soils, and there's no mineralization in the food either. So yeah, we've got a lot of different angles that this crisis is coming at us with.
You made me think of what I put in the school bag of my son and my two sons today, but it's better not to count how many carrots. I need to do that. Well, let's talk about then the regenerative gardening. Where to start? How small garden can really make an impact? And for our listeners, what are the suggestions you have to start their own backyard gardens and become more food independent, as you said?
Yeah. Well, if you have a backyard, I've actually created a free webinar called backyardfoodproduction.com because I get this question so often. We created a free webinar for people to go to. And you can, even as a beginner, you can grow about half of your own food in a backyard size space, and as small as 3 parking spots. So, but even if you're in an apartment or a condominium, there is still a tremendous amount you can do. Greens, sprouts, mushrooms. I even have a friend I've set up and she's growing quail eggs in her apartment. And it's vital that you do so. And more so for the nutrition than the calories, but because it's, as I said, there's no nutrition. We used to say, oh, in the grocery store, you could be a perimeter shopper, right? If you shopped all around the edges. And now there's nothing there either. There's no nutrition there. And then there's also, of course, a deep concern. We saw in 2020 how the grocery stores got boarded up, and you had to wait in long lines, or the food supply got disrupted. So, there's a lot of reasons to be growing your own food, and growing even a little bit or a lot will help every bit significantly. First of all, you're not using anywhere near the fossil fuels because it's not having to be packaged or delivered to you. Home growers tend to use way less water. I think it's like we use 84% less water than the commercial growers. And we also use, most of us are growing organically. We're not using any chemicals or toxins. So the help on the environment by you growing even a small amount of your own food is tremendous.
And what do you suggest to somebody to really start from zero? Just a small piece of land. What do you suggest? Any particular species, for example, period of the year, where and when to start?
You're maybe gonna laugh at this because everybody who normally thinks of gardens when they think of growing food, but honestly, the best place to start is with a small flock of laying hens, so chickens. And here's why. First of all, you can get it up very, very quickly, right? You build a coop and run, set up the water and the feeder. I mean, you can do that over a couple of weekends. Go out and buy. I recommend everybody start with like 6 laying hens. And as soon as they get settled in, you're going to have egg production happening. And 6 laying hens will lay, a laying hen will lay about 250 eggs in a year. So 6 of them you get about 1,500 eggs. They take a little time off sometimes if it's too hot or too cold, and they sometimes need to, it's called molting, where they change out their feathers. So it's not 365 eggs, but 250. But 250 eggs times 6 chickens, that's 1,500 eggs. And if you think about it, that's a 3-egg omelet for you every morning for breakfast. And then you'll have 33 dozen eggs to give away or trade or eat and use in other recipes. So you can get it ramped up really, really quickly. And eggs are a deeply, deeply nutritious food. And the whole cholesterol thing, I think, has gone away now. That was a conversation that happened in the 70s and 80s and whatever, but it's a whole complete food.
And yet we seem to have had a big egg crisis, I think, in the United States as well as in parts of Europe.
It's happening, I know, right? So all of a sudden, a whole bunch of people have been having me on, like, Marjory, how do we keep eggs in the backyard? How do we keep chickens in the backyard? And I'm like, good. If it takes a crisis to wake you up, then whatever it takes, let's do it.
Absolutely. And I grew up for the first few years of my life in a little town in India, and we certainly had enough hens, enough cows to, not need to buy a lot of stuff. And that was probably the most nutritious years of my life.
I bet it was. Yeah, lucky you.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, Marjorie, one of the questions that Carmen and I had discussed before was, how do we go from the idea of doing something in your backyard, self-sufficiency, to actually, preparing for survival, So we keep hearing that the next big global crisis is not chemical, not atomic, it's probably climate related, right? So that obviously is going to have a huge impact on food. How do we prepare for such an unexpected scenario? What survival skills do we need? And essentially, how do we become better prepared for such disruptions?
Yeah, I'd also like to add in there, right now, the thing that we're looking at most is the collapse of the US dollar. Like that's very likely to occur this summer, actually, which means that, kind of Weimar Germany, you'll have piles and piles of dollars and they won't buy anything, and banking system collapse. We also have threats of cyber attacks, which have been widely discussed that, that's a very likelihood. So yes, we have a lot of things coming at us. Really start building a backup food supply. I would really recommend that. So, and it doesn't have to be hard. It's just you go to the grocery store uh, and buy, if you normally used to buying, a jar of coconut oil, we'll buy 2 or 3 of them, you know. Um, I love butter. I buy extra butter and throw it in the freezer, stocking up on things. The traditional things to stock up on are beans and rice. And the reason why is because they're very easy to store. They have a lot of calories in them, and they store for generally a pretty long time. Beans will last about 5 years, and rice about 20 years, and they're just a great staple. But I would really, really recommend. And then on the other hand, you are not going to be able to store up enough food to make it through this, and you need fresh food, deeply nutritious food. So you do need to start growing food. And yeah, I would, again, I've laid it all out in that webinar at backyardfoodproduction.com, but the 3 simple steps to get started is to have a small garden, to have that small laying flock of hens, and then also a small rabbitry where you're breeding rabbits for meat. And I'd really recommend you get started on this right away. One interesting example is here in the United States, it's almost impossible to get any baby chicks right now because of the egg crisis. Everybody's suddenly deciding they want laying hens, and they've gone out and they bought all the chicks. And you can go online to the different hatcheries, which I've done, and they say, no, there's not, and we're actually never going to have any more chicks available. There's none available. And a few hatcheries will say, okay, if you order them now, we'll get them to you in October or something like that. So things can change very, very rapidly. So I really recommend you get started right away. What was real interesting, I don't recommend actually for a beginner to start from baby chicks because it takes 6 months to get a hen up to laying age. And you want production right away. So I really recommend you go on like Craigslist or some of these Facebook marketplace, whatever's working in your community, and buy the laying hens that are already of age. Get 6-month-old laying hens. And it's funny because even though there's no chicks here, I looked on Craigslist in Austin and Phoenix and Philadelphia, just some kind of medium large cities. And there were plenty of laying hens available in the market. So it's very interesting. I think modern people are so out of touch with growing food, they've lost some common sense and some practicality. But I bring that up as a demonstration of how quickly things can disappear. And I predict that the next thing that's going to disappear are seeds, heirloom seeds. That's another small market. There's only a small amount of people who do it every year. And you don't regenerate those seeds. You can't 3D print them. You have to wait until next year for the harvest to come in. So, I mean, they can ramp it up quickly, but it's better to have those seeds now.
And Marjorie, you discussed how important it is from a security perspective, but also from a health perspective. You talk about nutrition level. Let's go also beyond that. How is that important from a medical perspective to reach this kind of self-sufficiency, and why self-sufficient or self-grown food could be used rightly as a medicine?
Yeah, well, I'm actually starting to work with the MAHA movement here in America, which is Make America Healthy Again. And I think that movement has started to realize how important it is to eat they know to eat high quality food, but it's going to take a long time for the governmental systems and the regulatory and whatever to change. The government takes years to change, whereas you in your backyard can get on this today, right? And yeah, so there's absolutely no nutrition in the food, and it's loaded with toxins, pesticides, chemical fertilizers, then all the additives they add to it. So physical disease or disease at the physical level is very, very simple. Now, we know disease has many other vectors, right? Emotionally, if you're under a lot of stress, or mentally, if you're thinking too much, you can create disease. But at the physical level, it's very, very simple. It's just malnutrition, so lack of nutrition, or high toxicity. And that is the root cause of disease at the physical level. And pretty much the only way that you can really make sure that you're cutting out the toxicities and increasing the nutrition is to grow your own at this point in time. So it's essential, I would say, if you want to live very long. By the way, I'll divert off into a little story. I think I told you guys this or not, but I host these big online summits once a year called the Homegrown Food Summit. And one year, my keynote speaker was a guy named Dave Asprey. And Dave Asprey is pretty famous in the world for being very interested in longevity. He's a very, very wealthy man. I think his supplement bill is like $30,000 a month for this, he's got access to and he talks about the cryogenics and the nootropics and the, what is it? All kinds of different high-tech ways to become healthy. And you might say, why is he on a homegrown food summit? Because Dave himself has a 12-acre homestead where he grows his own food, and every centenarian, so that's somebody over 100 years old, that's alive, that has been alive, that we've interviewed, that is, the kind of centenarian you want to be, like vibrant and moving and healthy and clear and mentally sharp. They either grew or had access to homegrown food for a significant part of their life. So it's that important.
And thank you. I think that's a very good point. So it's not about reducing the latest technology, the latest development that is available to us. It's just finding the right balance, finding the right way to use it without having any bias, I would say.
Yeah, I use, when I can find technology that helps me, I use it. Like, for example, electric fencing is wonderful for keeping the chickens in an area, or, keeping the dogs out. So I'm not against technology, but I do really want to continue to go right back to the earth, which is where the creation comes from.
Thank you. And one last question, Marjorie, probably. It's, do you think we still have some blind spot into this subject, or anything that remains an unsolved problem that we should still think about?
Yeah, well, here's another reason why we need to have more backyard food production, and that's genetics. So people are not really growing food anymore. The USDA did a study in the 1990s where they took the seed catalogs from the 1890s and compared them with the seed catalogs from 1990. And they found that, some crazy amount, like 90% of the seed varieties were gone, that they're no longer there. So we're losing genetic diversity. And it's because, these seed varieties used to be, you grew them, I grew them, your Aunt Martha grew them, and they were available. But the last big push, especially here in the United States, was in the World War II in the Victory Garden movement. And then after that, everybody pretty much dropped it. So we have lost genetic diversity. And we need to bring that back. We've lost, pumpkins that would last well over the winter versus just rotting away as some of them do, or, tomatoes that had a particular flavor, or, people even grew food specifically for its nutritional content. Like, we know these carrots have more nutrition than these other ones. So, yeah, the genetic diversity is a vital, important part for why we need to have more backyard. I estimate that we need to have about 70% in any community doing backyard food production, um, or you won't be able to have a sustainable food shed.
Wow, that's That is a striking number. Marjorie, this was a fantastic episode for us because we learned quite a bit about practical steps that we can take for self-sufficient living. We heard a few things around the science that backs it up. We understood a little bit about how do we prepare for a food crisis if it's coming to us. And then, of course, how do you even grow your own medicine? So absolutely amazing. Would you quickly, for our listeners, tell us where they can find more resources that you often go to or things that you put out there as well? And then we'll close the episode.
Yeah, well, thank you, Rishi. That was a great summary. Yeah, I really recommend you go to backyardfoodproduction.com to get started growing food, and please get started as soon as possible. I I post a lot of my own content now. I have a Substack channel. So I do a lot of short videos like how do you regrow onions, or how do you do container gardening with sweet potatoes, or why I'm growing ducks right now. I just do a lot of information about growing food and what I'm storing up and what I'm doing in my day. And they're just fun short videos. So if you head over to Substack and look for Marjory Wildcraft, you'll find me there. And I really recommend that free webinar at backyardfoodproduction.com.
Thank you so much, Marjorie. It's been really a pleasure. What I take out of it is, so about food, it has to be rich in nutrients. It has to be secure, so available to all, but also has to be diverse. This is also extremely important.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All
And I
right.
hope you...
So that's it for our episode of Sustainability Forward. Huge thank you to you, Marjorie Wildcraft, for sharing your powerful insights and practical wisdom on living self-sufficiently. To our audience, if you enjoyed these conversations, please subscribe to the podcast under the banner Sustainability Forward on LinkedIn, on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And if you found it valuable, of course, share it with a friend or a colleague who's passionate about sustainability. Help us, by writing a review. Let us know your comments, and we'll continue to improve the content for this podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Sustainability Forward.